Chandeliers shimmered like frozen stars above the ballroom, laughter echoed across the marble floor, and tuxedos and silk gowns brushed past like rivers of wealth. But at the edge of the hall stood a man who didn't belong. His shoes were scuffed, his suit was borrowed, and his eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights and unspoken battles. He wasn't supposed to be there, yet fate had pulled him inside. And then, it happened. A little girl in a satin dress broke away from the crowd, ran across the polished floor, and clung to his legs with trembling arms. "Daddy!" she cried, and in that one word the entire room froze. If this story grips your heart already, take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to Whispers of Kinness so you never miss these emotional journeys that remind us what truly matters. Star Ethan Hayes had never known luxury. At 35, he worked 2 jobs, loading trucks by dawn and washing dishes by night. Every dollar he earned went into raising his 6-year-old daughter Lily, the only light that kept him moving through endless darkness. He'd promised her mother, on the night she passed, that he'd give Lily the kind of life she deserved. But promises are heavy things when you're poor, and Ethan often found himself drowning beneath them. On this particular evening, Ethan was exhausted. He had no business being near the city's grandest hotel, yet a friend from the restaurant where he worked had pressed an invitation into his hand. "It's a charity gala," his friend explained. "Free food, maybe some connections. You never know who might help." Ethan had hesitated. People like him weren't welcome in places like that. But something in him, a desperate spark, urged him to try. Maybe, just maybe, someone out there would see his worth. He borrowed a jacket 2 sizes too big, knotted an old tie, and walked into a world that glittered with money he'd never touch. His eyes darted nervously across tables heavy with gold-rimmed plates and crystal glasses. He felt invisible, swallowed by the music and the murmurs of people who didn't even glance his way. Then he saw her. A little girl, no older than Lily, in a pale blue gown with a bow in her hair. She stood apart from the crowd, scanning the room as if searching for something, or someone. Her eyes landed on Ethan, and before he could look away, she bolted across the floor. "Daddy," she cried, her voice trembling with relief. Ethan froze, every muscle locking tight. The girl's tiny arms wrapped around his legs as though she'd found a long-lost treasure. Gasps filled the hall. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A woman in diamonds pressed a hand to her chest. A man dropped his champagne glass, the crystal shattering on marble. Ethan bent awkwardly, prying her hands gently. "Sweetheart, I think you've made a mistake." But her eyes, those wide, tear-filled eyes, shook him to his core. They carried a loneliness he recognized, the same look Lily had when she asked about the mother she barely remembered. Before he could say more, a voice cut through the silence. Sharp, commanding, filled with years of authority. "Clara!" The crowd parted as a woman strode forward, tall and elegant in an emerald gown. Her presence alone made people shrink back. Margaret Sinclair, widow of the billionaire Charles Sinclair, one of the most powerful women in the city, and in her shadow trailed journalists, assistants, and men in suits. The little girl clung tighter to Ethan. "Don't let them take me," she whispered. Ethan's heart twisted. Margaret stopped inches away, her eyes narrowing on Ethan. "Who are you?" she demanded. I think there's been a mistake," Ethan stammered. "She thought I was," but the girl interrupted, clutching his hand. "He's my daddy!" "I know it. I can feel it." The room erupted. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Reporters raised cameras, flashes burst like lightning. Ethan's world spun. All he had wanted was to find a meal, maybe a chance at a job. Instead, he stood accused before the city's elite, with a child he'd never met calling him father. Margaret's lips tightened. She snapped her fingers, and 2 guards approached. "Remove him." Ethan tried to explain, but the girl's grip was iron. She sobbed, clinging to him as the guards pulled her away, and though Ethan could have left then, could have disappeared back into the shadows, he didn't. Something deep inside whispered that this was more than a mistake. This was fate knocking at his door. The days that followed blurred into chaos. Newspapers printed his picture. Headlines screamed about the mystery man at the Sinclair Gala. Whispers painted him as a con artist, a fraud, someone trying to swindle a billionaire family. Ethan's life, already fragile, teetered on collapse. He nearly lost his dishwashing job. Lily asked why people were pointing at them on the street. But one afternoon, a black car pulled up outside his apartment. A man in a suit stepped out. "Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Sinclair requests your presence." Ethan wanted to slam the door. He didn't belong in their world, yet something in Clara's tearful eyes haunted him. So he went. The Sinclair estate was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Iron gates, gardens carved like paintings, walls that seemed to touch the sky. Inside, Margaret sat waiting, her expression as cold as marble. "We've done a test," she said flatly, without greeting. "DNA," Clara insisted. "The results are shocking." She slid an envelope across the table. Ethan's hands trembled as he opened it. The words blurred before his eyes. "Paternity confirmed. 99.9% probability." The room tilted. His chest tightened. What is this?" Margaret's voice cracked for the first time. "Clara is yours. Your daughter." Ethan shook his head violently.
"No, that's not possible. I only ever—" He stopped.
His mind flickered back to college, to a girl with laughter in her eyes who vanished before he knew she was pregnant. Could it be? Margaret's eyes softened, just a little. "Her mother never told you. She was my daughter. She passed last year. Clara has been lost ever since." Ethan staggered back, gripping the chair for balance. He had another child, a daughter he never knew existed. At that moment, Clara burst into the room. She ran straight into his arms, her tiny hands clutching his neck. "I knew it," she whispered. "I told them. I knew you were my daddy." Tears burned Ethan's eyes. He held her tight, his heart breaking and mending all at once. From that day, Ethan's life changed. Margaret resisted at first. She feared this poor, struggling man couldn't raise a child of privilege. But Ethan's love was undeniable. He introduced Clara to Lily, and the two girls bonded like sisters separated by fate. The path wasn't easy. The media hounded him, strangers judged him, and he often felt torn between worlds. Yet through every struggle, Ethan never let go of the promise he made to both his daughters. They would never feel unloved. And slowly, Margaret softened too. She saw in Ethan not a man of wealth, but a man of character. A man who, despite having nothing, gave everything.